Erev Shabbat Shalom Rabotai. We are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Bava Metzia. We are up to Perek Aleph Mishnah Chet. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'enu Nishmat Neria ben Svetlana Ranbai Veliyahu ben Burcha Israel of Chanabad Miriam Sason ben Rayin Yoshua ben Shifra Menuchatam Began Eden Amen and Leavdil ben Chaim Lechaim v'Derefua Shelemav Daniel Shalom ben Rosa betoch Shah Cholei Israel and Dachlama Mera Binyamin Or Tzion Chai ben Dvorah. The Mishnah lists certain types of lost documents that should be returned. Matzah, Igerot, Shum, if someone found letters of appraisal, meaning documents that state that a borrower's land was appraised by the court and then foreclosed and given to the lender as payment for a loan. Now the borrower was not able to repay the loan, so the court foreclosed on his property and gave it to the lender. Before doing so, they must appraise the land to make sure that it is valued at its fair market price. The appraisal is recorded in a document that states that the land has been given to the lender in payment of a debt. The purpose of this document is to show that the lender now owns the land, so the borrower cannot claim that it is still his. The Igrot Mazon, or he found letters of support, meaning documents that state that the court has sold land from a man's estate in order to support his wife and daughters. One of the obligations a man has to his wife is that if he dies, she and their young daughters receive support from his estate, as it mentions in Ketubot chapter 4, Mishnot 11 and 12. If the heirs refuse to pay, the court authorizes the wife to sell some of the property of the estate to pay for the support. The court writes a document to show that she has the right to sell the property. Shitre Chalitza, or he found documents that state that a woman has received Chalitza. If a man dies without children, there is a mitzvah for his brother to marry the widow, Yibum. If he does not wish to marry her, he must perform the procedure of Chalitza, removal of the shoe with her, to permit her to marry someone else, as it states in the book of Devarim, chapter 25, verses 5 to 9. Once this procedure is performed, the court writes a document for the woman as proof the Chalitza was done. Umeunin, or he found documents that record a marriage being dissolved through the act of mi'un. Under biblical law, a girl under the age of 12 may be married off by her father. If the father dies, the brothers authorized, if the father dies, the rabbis authorized her mother and brothers to marry her off so she will not be taken advantage of by others. Since his marriage is only rabbinically valid, the rabbi said that if at any point the girl wishes to leave the marriage, she does not need a get. She must merely state this wish in front of the court and she is no longer married. This procedure is known as mi'un, literally refusal. The court then gives her a document stating that mi'un has taken place and she is free to marry another man. Vishitre berurin, or he found documents concerning the selection of judges for a monetary case. Monetary cases are judged by a court of three, as says in Sanhedrin chapter 1, Mishnah 1. This does not need to be done before a regular court. If the litigants agree, they may each select one judge and have those two judges choose a third judge. The court then writes a document stating whom the litigants chose to prevent them from later changing their minds. V'chol ma'aseh bet din, or he found documents that record any other act of the court. This refers to various types of court orders involving the collection of debts. For example, the court issued a lender a warrant to seize the borrower's land for his loan. The law in all these cases that the finder should return the documents to the people who are supposed to have received them. This is because these documents are all issued by a court, and the court writes them only when the events recorded in the documents actually take place. Therefore, it is clear that these documents were actually given to the people who were supposed to receive them and were then lost by those people. We therefore return the documents to them. The documents listed in the previous Mishnah, however, may have been written sometime before the actual event. It is therefore possible that the writer then changed his mind and then lost them without ever using them. The Mishnah now teaches about cases where even the documents listed in the previous Mishnah, such as divorce and loan documents, should be returned. Matzah b'chafisa o bidluskima. If someone found documents in a small leather bag, the Mishnah refers to a specific type of leather container normally used to store wine. The person found this type of container in the street and there were documents in it, or in a large leather box. This refers to a box usually used by elderly people to hold their regular utensils so that they can easily find them. Tachich shel shtarot, or he found a roll of documents, several documents wrapped around one another. The innermost document is rolled up like a scroll, and the next one is rolled up around it. The third document is then rolled up around the second one. Or agudah shel shtarot, or he found a bundle of documents, a stack of several documents rolled together. The documents are placed down one on top of the other and then rolled together into a single roll. Each coil of the roll is therefore made up of all the documents. He should return them to the person who correctly identifies what type of container they were in or the way in which they were rolled. It is unusual for people to store documents in wine flasks or containers used by elderly people for their utensils. Therefore, these features are considered a siman, an identifying mark, and it can be assumed that the one who knows them is the correct owner. Similarly, multiple documents are not usually rolled together in the ways described in the Mishnah. Therefore, the way in which the documents are rolled is also considered a siman, and the one who can identify it can be assumed to be the one who lost it. This is the law for all lost items, as we will learn in the next chapter, B'ezrat Hashem Bli Neder. Now, for example, if loan documents were found and the lender gives the correct description, the documents are returned to him. If the borrower gives the correct description, they are returned to him. Now, normally we cannot return a lost document to either party because we do not know if the debt was paid or not. However, where one of the parties can identify the unusual way in which a document was rolled or stored, we can safely assume that he was the one who lost it. Similarly, if a woman can correctly identify the unusual way in which her get was rolled or stored, this proves that she did in fact receive the document and is divorced. Therefore, the concern that the husband wrote it and then decided not to give it does not apply. Now, when identifying a bundle of documents, it is not enough to just say how they are rolled. The person must also know the number of documents in the roll, as the Mishnah will now explain. How many documents must there be in the bundle of documents? 3 documents or more bound to one another by being rolled together. The owner must know how many documents were in the bundle in addition to knowing that they were rolled as a bundle, because only both of these identifications together are considered a siman. When a person finds a lost item and wishes to return it, he makes an announcement about his find so that the one who lost it will come to him and identify it. Since a person who finds documents must announce that he found documents in the plural, it's obvious that there are at least 2 of them. Therefore, knowing the number of documents is a proof only where there are at least 3 documents and the owner provides the correct number. Now, in certain cases, a bundle or roll of documents can be identified by the nature of the documents themselves. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, Echad haloveh mishlosha yachzir laloveh. If someone found 3 loan documents and all 3 loans were from one person who borrowed from 3 different people, he should return the documents to the borrower. 3 lenders would not have had their documents rolled together. Therefore, these documents must have fallen from the borrower who paid the loans and received the documents back from the lenders. He then rolled them together and lost them. And the same logic can also be applied to the opposite case. Shelosha halovin me'echad yachzir lamalveh. If 3 documents are about 3 people who borrowed from one lender, the finder should return them to the lender. Had the borrowers lost them, they would not have been rolled together. Rather, all 3 documents must have been in the possession of the single lender who rolled all his unpaid documents together. The Mishnah discusses cases where one finds documents in his possession but does not remember why he has them. Matzah shtar ben shtarotav. If someone found a document regarding another person's loan among his own documents, veno yodeh mativo, and he does not know its status, meaning he does not remember if the loan was not paid and the lender gave it to him to hold, or if it was paid and the borrower received the document and deposited it with him, or if only part of the loan was paid and the borrower and lender both agreed that he should hold the document until the loan was fully paid. When a borrower repays part of a loan, he does not want the lender to keep the original loan document because he could then present it in court and collect the entire debt from him. On the other hand, the lender does not want to return the document to the borrower because the borrower could then claim that he paid the entire debt. It was therefore customary in such a case to deposit the document with a third person who would ensure that the debt was fully paid before giving the document back to the borrower. The Mishnah says, the law is that the document should be set aside until the prophet Eliyahu comes and tells us what happened. Eliyahu Navi will come right before the final redemption to announce the coming of the Mashiach. At that time, he will clarify all unresolved halachic questions. The finder should not return it to either the lender or the borrower because he does not know to whom it really belongs. Another case where one finds unknown documents in his possession, imeshimen sim ponot. If one finds that there are receipts among his documents, meaning he had loan documents regarding money that he lent, and among them was a receipt that stated that one of the debts was paid, and he does not remember if indeed the debt was paid or not, he should do whatever is written in the receipts, and he should consider those loans for which there are receipts as paid. Although if the loan had been paid, the receipt should have been in the possession of the borrower, not the lender. It is possible that when the borrower came to repay the loan, the receipt was not ready, and he trusted the lender to give it to him the next day. In the end, the borrower forgot to get the receipt, which is why it's in the lender's possession. Now, the Mishnah discusses a case where the lender found the original loan document together with documents that were torn because they were paid. We therefore assume that this document was also paid as the receipt states. But if the document was not with torn documents, we assume it was not paid, even though there was a receipt, as the Rav explains based off the Gemara. And that is then a Perek Aleph Mishnah Chet. We continue now with Perek Bet Mishnah Aleph. If someone finds a lost object, there are times when he must announce what he found and try to return it to its owner, and there are times when he may keep it for himself. The first Mishnah lists items that a finder may keep and does not have to announce. Elu mitziot shelo, which objects are the finders to keep? Ve'elu chayav la'achriz, and which objects must he announce and try to return to their owner? Elu mitziot shelo, these are the found objects that a finder may keep. Matzah perot mefuzarin, if he found scattered produce. Ma'ot mefuzarot, or scattered coins which have no siman. Fruits and vegetables have no siman of their own. Nevertheless, if they are stacked or bundled together, the way in which they are stacked or the place where they are left can serve as a siman. Once they are scattered, they have no siman, and the owner gives up hope of getting them back. And the same is true for coins. Or he found small bundles of grain stalks in a public place where they get kicked or stepped on by people passing by and lose any siman they may have. Or round cakes of pressed figs. In the times of the Mishnah, it was common for people to dry figs and press them into round cakes, which made them convenient to store or carry on a trip. Since everyone did this the same way, they generally had no siman. Kikarot shel nachtom, or loaves of bread from a baker. Breads made in a bakery all look the same and have no siman. Homemade loaves, however, are different from one another and are therefore identifiable, as we will learn in the next Mishnah. Macharozot shel dagim, or strings of fish. V'chatichot shel basar, or slices of meat. Fishermen would tie a standard number of fish onto one string. Slices of meat were also of a standard shape and weight. V'gizet semar habaot mibidinatan, or fleeces of raw wool that come from the province without having been processed, meaning from the countryside in that district where the sheep are raised and their wool is sheared. All the raw wool in that area look the same and have no siman. Once the wool is given to a craftsman to process, however, he makes a sign in each batch to identify whose wool it is. V'anitze pishtan, or ordinary bundles of flax fibers, meaning flax that has been broken apart and combed into fibers, but has not yet been spun into linen thread. Ulshonot shel algaman, or tongues of purple wool. Wool that had been combed and dyed purple was rolled into long wads called tongues because of their tongue-like shape. These were common in those days and could not be identified one from another. Harelu shelo, all of these are his to keep because they have no siman and their owner gives up hope of getting them back. Dir v'bimeir, these are the words of Rabbi Meir. Now, since all of these items have no siman, even if they are found, the owner cannot identify them and he gives up hope of ever getting them back. They therefore become ownerless hefker, and the finder may keep them. In the case of the small bundles found in a public place, even if they still do have a siman, the finder may keep them. Since the owner knows that they will get stepped on and kicked around, he does not expect the siman to remain in place, and he therefore gives up hope of getting them back. A finder may keep something only if the owner gave up hope of getting it back before he found it. In all of these cases, it can be assumed that the owner already knew that he lost the item and gave up hope before the finder picked it up, either because they are valuable and the owner is always checking on them, or because they are bulky and heavy so that he soon notices when they are missing. Now, according to Rabbi Meir, even if there is something irregular about these objects that might serve as a siman, if the irregularity could have occurred on its own, as in the following cases, so that the owner may not have known about it, it is not considered a siman, and the finder may keep the objects. The next Tana disagrees. Rabbi Yehuda says, Kol sheyesh bo shinui chav la'achiz. Anything that has some irregularity in it, the finder must announce in public and return it to its owner, even if the irregularity may have occurred on its own and not through the owner. Ketzad, for example, matzah igul uptocho cheres. If he found a round cake of pressed figs with a piece of pottery in it, kikar uptocho ma'ot, or a loaf of bread from a baker with coins in it, he must announce his find and try to return it to the owner, although it's quite possible that the broken piece of pottery got stuck in the cake of pressed figs without the owner's knowledge, and that the coins fell into the dough accidentally. It would be a very unusual for a person to put a broken piece of pottery into his cake of figs, or to put coins into his bread. It's more likely that these things fell in without the owner's knowledge. Rabbi Yehuda considers these things as siman, since the owner might be aware of them and use them to identify the lost cake or loaf. Therefore, the finder must announce these items and try to return them to the owner. Rabbi Meir, however, is of the opinion that we assume that the owner was unaware of these things, since there is no other identifying mark. He gives up hope of getting the items back, and the finder may keep them. And the Rav tells us, no, the Rav does not say anything yet on this point. Now, the rule is that if a Torah scholar says that he recognizes a lost item as his, we return it to him even if he cannot provide any specific siman. This is because a Torah scholar can be trusted not to lie about recognizing an item, as the Rav explains based on the Gemara in Metzia, page 23b. Therefore, in a place where Torah scholars live, a person who finds something must announce his find even if it has no obvious siman. The next time I will explain that even in such a place, it's not necessary to try and return every found object. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, Kol kele anporia, any new and unused vessels which the eye of the owner has not yet grown accustomed to and which he can therefore not recognize. The term anporia is a contraction of the Hebrew words anporia, which means there is no visual recognition here. En chayav la'achiz, the finder is not obligated to announce finding them. Rather, they are his to keep, even in a place where there are Torah scholars. And the Rav does tell us, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, the Halakha does follow the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. And that is on the bottom of today's Mishna Yomi. Everybody should have the Erev Shabbat Shalom. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.